Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. It's the middle of the week, we're halfway done, almost halfway done. Anyways, with this week's theme, we're going to continue on with some Norwegian rock and metal. Today we're going to be looking at the band Mayhem with the song Freezing Moon. Now this band logo has definitely put me in a mindset for something a bit aggressive and heavy. So I'm hoping that they deliver on that. I'm not a big fan of going in with certain expectations, getting the opposite. It takes me a second to figure out my bearings. Let's dive into this one. Like I said, Freezing Moon. There we go. I was feeling a 6/8, but the accents weren't quite lining up properly. But yeah, this is definitely in 3/4. Yeah, definitely a 3/4. I love that transition, how they took the downbeat of the old idea and replicated that in this new idea, so it felt like we were just doing a repetition. And so we moved into the next one. This mix is very sparse, though. Alright, we got a shift to 4/4 with some ridiculous speed right here, utilizing a lot of the same movement flows of the guitar melodies we saw previously, really ramping them up though. Very interesting vocal style. It's almost like a growl interpretation of a low energy singing style. Very interesting. That very subtle tempo shift there. We were coming in at the same tempo we had just ended on, but there's a slight retardando on beats 3 and 4 before coming into this very sludgy feel. Yeah, the drumming is definitely what's selling me on this one. There's always these really nice embellishments put throughout the song, and the drums are really keeping it fresh while the guitars are mostly doing a lot of repetition. Very interesting note choices. The tone itself sounds like wailing, and then we actually throw in some very dissonant notes in there as well. Again, those drums are just killing it. There are moments where the vocals almost sound like throat singing. It's a very interesting, like, low effort style of growling. Oh, that was interesting. The left side cut the tone out just a hair before the right side, maybe half a second or so. So I want to clarify something real quick. Talking about the vocal style, I keep bringing up that it sounds like a growl of a low effort singing style. I don't want that to sound like I'm putting down the vocal style or making it sound easier to do than it is. But low effort singing is not necessarily meaning that there's no effort required to do it. It's that the perception is there's no effort to do it. Um, I think this might be the most prominent one. A lot of Billie Eilish's uh, popular songs, "Bad Guy," for example, it sounds like she's just kind of mumbling into a microphone, really breathy and airy, not a lot of volume. That's what that kind of low effort singing style is. It doesn't mean that there's no effort put into it. It's a specific style though, and it has the perception of having no effort in the creation of it. And this vocal style reminds me of what if someone tried to do that, but harsh. It's kind of got that lowness to it. It has that low volume, the low notes, but it also has a little bit of the distortion that you're gonna get creating a growl. There's only two or three notes that he really hits at the end of the song, near the end of the song, that you can feel. You can tell there's a lot of air control and diaphragm pressure coming up to create these notes because he goes for high volume. It's large contrast compared to the other vocal style that he uses throughout the entirety of the song. So, like I said, I wanted to clear that up in case anybody thought I was saying that his vocals didn't require any work or effort or skill or anything like that. Not at all. I have no idea how he's creating them, but I know what it sounds like. Um, and that's kind of the vibe I'm getting is a harsh, low effort singing style. Um, but it does bring about some really interesting ideas because one, it leads to a strong lack of enunciation. A lot of the words tend to slur together. Some of that is going to be from the fact that he's kind of emulating that sort of low effort singing style, but creating the harsh elements on it. But then also the nature of the growl really muddying up things. I've mentioned this before, especially when we talk about growls, especially during Growl Week a few months ago, that what I really look for in harsh vocals is clarity of speech, where I can actually hear what they're saying. Otherwise, it's just sounds and tones. And typically, harsh vocals are going to be more rhythmic. So unless they're rhythmically interesting, then it's just going to be a detriment to the sound for me. The melody's missing, so that either rhythmically they need to be interesting or lyrically they need to be interesting. And usually the rhythms are just not there. And if I can't understand the lyrics, it's failing on all three fronts for me. Now, of course, that's going to change on subsequent listens. Maybe I really enjoy the way the mix works. Maybe the muddiness works for the themes and the atmosphere they're going for, and I look up the lyrics later and it all fits together, and I really appreciate it on that artistic level of, thematic cohesion. But on a first listen, or if I'm listening casually, that's what I'm looking for usually with growls, is clear enunciation. And this did not have it at all. I do believe that it was in a non-English language, so I don't think I was going to pick up anything regardless, but I still had a really difficult time making out syllables, even if I didn't understand what words those syllables were creating. The interesting thing, though, is I mentioned there were a few notes that he really put some air pressure behind. He got some volume, he got some range, and he still put that rasp on them as well. They all sounded like they had poor technique, though, and I don't know if that is part of the aesthetic of the low effort style. And maybe he's a gorgeous singer with fantastic technique, and he edged into that, into the sort of warble that he had in his voice, like he didn't have control over the pitch, as an aesthetic choice. I don't know why it was there, but it is something that stood out to me very clearly, was that most of those notes that he went for that were way up there, more volume, he lacked control over them. Or at least there is a perception of a lack of control over the notes. They had warble to them, they had distortion that wavered in and out. It seems like he was not comfortable in those ranges with that distortion at that volume. And again, it could be an aesthetic choice, but at least to me, on a first time listen without the context of it all, it just sounds like bad technique to me. And I do hope that he either, improved technique, or it was done purposefully and he was, had complete control over this perception of no control. Because continuing to do that, especially if he does it in many other songs, is definitely a way that you can damage your vocal cords. I'm not a vocal coach. I don't know how quickly that could happen, but it sounds like something that is not going to be kind on your vocal cords. Now let's get into some of the music, though. That's what I do. Like I said, I'm not a vocal coach. I am a composer. So let's check out some of the stuff they're doing with the music. There is some really nice ideas of variation done at the beginning of the track. I mentioned that both of the first two guitar melodies utilized very similar ideas as far as melodic shaping. The sort of the way that the notes go up and down, and how they pick how far up, how far down, when to go up, when to go down, when to sustain a note. Sometimes not even when to hold a note, but when to play the same note twice or three times. We typically refer to that as the shape of the melody. If you envision the melody going up with higher notes, down with lower notes, the shape of both of the first two melodies are very similar. In fact, they share the exact same first note, which helped them with the transition. I pointed out after the first section started, or when the first section ended, it sounded like we were going to do another repetition, but instead we went into the new riff. And I think that's really awesome. It's a really cool way to transition into a new idea, is to keep that first beat, or maybe the first two beats of an opening bar, the same as your previous section. You cut everything else out, you bring the guitars, whatever's playing that melody line, you can put them front and center, maybe accompany them with some chords or some percussion elements, but really bring the focus back to them. If you've built it up, put an atmosphere and stuff like that around it, put the focus back on that main melody so that the ears will naturally listen into it and be like, oh, okay, we cut everything out, but we're going to continue this. And then you don't continue it. You just have something that's similar but different. And I love that. I don't remember hearing that for the third riff. And the fourth riff was when we started doing the speed stuff, and there's just a lot of tremolo picking in there. I don't believe the melodic shaping was similar. It felt like we were sitting on notes for a lot longer than we were previously, but we also had a tempo change as well. So it very well could be that they utilized one idea and continued to put variation on it over the course of the entire song. But at least to my ears on a first listen, it was more of an idea that happened in the first two riffs and did not pop up again. Now, the thing is, though, that these riffs are the main melodic element of the songs. The bass is kind of doing some bassy stuff. The drums are laying down some percussive elements. Some sections they are doing raw metronome stuff. Other sections they are doing some really nice embellishments to provide a little bit of change to what's going on. A lot of the song is very repetitious, so that leads the guitars to being the main melody line, but there aren't any traditional melodies. And what I mean by that is that the guitars are playing melodic lines, primarily because there's no other melody to accept the spot. It kind of went to the guitars by default. But the guitars are playing riffs. And at least in my mind, melodies are less repetitious and are longer ideas. Primarily without repetition, but I suppose you could use 16 or 32 bar melody lines and then repeat it, and it'd still be pretty melodic, I would say. So we have these riffs that are acting as a quasi-melody, but they're also on the shorter side, maybe 4 bars each, and there's a lot of repetition in them. So while they are the melody part of the song, they are not really providing too many melodic elements to the song. The song ends up being very dependent on mood, atmosphere, texture. Basically, this is more of a textural metal song than a melodic one. And in that sense, I could see, people being fans of this. You really have to dig the atmosphere. The song doesn't do a lot of changing. There's not a lot of melodic or harmonic elements to it. You just really have to dig the mood that it sets, which is something that I am trying to come around to on this journey of doing these reaction channels and being introduced to more music, is that in my casual listenings, I have mostly gravitated towards music with very strong melody lines and harmonic elements. And I have not really explored too many textural or atmospheric songs. And you guys have definitely pushed me to listen to more of it. It's been a style of music that hasn't really resonated with me too strongly, but there definitely have been some songs over the last 2 years that I've just really enjoyed and ended up checking out more of that band and sometimes even finding new favorite bands. So I really appreciate that. But with that said, from a casual standpoint, this is still a song that I'm pretty much going to put in the does not resonate with Bryan pile. The atmosphere and the mood just they kind of bounce off of me. But like I said, if you're really digging this, there's very few other places I think you could get this style of or this type of listening experience other than this style of music. And these guys absolutely nail it. They create an atmosphere and they just live within it and explore it a bit over the course of 6.5 minutes. Part of that exploration is seeing how many ways they can look at this one idea. We see two riffs based off of it that take the spotlight, and then we get introduced to some vocals with a very unique, at least to me, vocal style. What I mentioned, that sort of harsh, low effort style of singing or growling, if you want to call it that. After that, we're introduced to a speed metal interpretation of this atmosphere, and then a sludge interpretation of the atmosphere before doing a small guitar solo and returning to the speed portion again. Oh, I did forget about that guitar solo until just now. There are some nice melodic elements to there, even if the entire thing is done in tremolo picking. There's still some really nice ups and downs. It's a little bit of a roller coaster as far as the shape goes, and I think it does well at balancing out the rather primary idea of textural exploration for the song. But we'll get to the solo in a second. I completely derailed my thought process because I forgot about that in its entirety. I do like, though, how they explore this idea in many different ways. Even if those sections, to me, do drag on a little bit too long, especially those opening two licks. They did quite a few repetitions with them without any variation or additional layers coming in, anything to help break up the monotony of it. Like I mentioned, if you're digging this, if you dig the atmosphere, you're probably going to enjoy this. If the atmosphere is not working for you, there really isn't much else for the song to hook a listener into. So you really got to dig that. I think fans of this style of music just really do. They really connect with what the atmosphere that Mayhem's creating. With that said, though, the drums do introduce some variation, and I will say that, at least for my listening experience, they're MVP of the song. They do so much to keep my attention from drifting, and I don't mean that in like a bad way. It's just, like I mentioned, the song is very static in several places, and the drums are pretty much the only dynamic element as far as the music goes. The drummer is constantly adding embellishments, little drum fills here and there, adding in some double bass kicks that weren't in the previous repetition. They're always changing up their approach while still maintaining that rhythmic metronome element of keeping the time for the rest of the bandmates. And they do it through the entire song. No 4-bar phrase felt the same to me. It felt like there's always something different in it. Maybe, they, instead of an eighth note, they play 2/16 notes for this, for this bass hit or something like that. The only part that I think really would have been a bit impossible for them, but the only section of the song where I felt like they weren't doing much embellishment is the speed section, but they were already filling up the soundscape with so many attacks. I really don't know how they could have put anything more in. Now, they could have taken some away. Every repetition, maybe, don't play the third beat of the third bar or the first beat of the fourth bar or something like that, and create these odd pockets that kind of do the same idea as adding elements in the slower sections. But at the same time, I completely understand it would break up the mood and really go against the genre typing that they're looking to achieve in that section. So I understand why the drummer didn't do it. Putting in some embellishments in that section would either have been way too difficult physically or just not worked with the music at all. But I still appreciate that in the sections where they did feel they had some room to possibly improvise or at least make changes to what was played in each 4-bar phrase, they did. And they added some variety to the music that, at least for me, I felt they really needed. Now let's get to that guitar section, the guitar solo. It appears it appeared after the sludge section, I think, right? And it went back to the speed section, or at least the speed feel, because the solo is pretty much all fast tremolo notes, tremolo picking, and no breaks, no stops. It was either holding a note or it was rising up some notes, falling down some notes, just a constant ride. It's really cool. I would love to see it on sheet music, actually, not tablature, sheet music, because I would love to see the notes themselves and how they go, because there's not going to be any rests to break it up. It's actually, I mentioned how you can kind of envision some melodic lines when we look at the shape of them as a roller coaster, and this would really look like a roller coaster with the rises and falls and sometimes the flat sections, and no breaks with the rest symbols to break up this constant flow of dots and stems. I just think it would look phenomenal. Just connect the dots and make this nice roller coaster on the paper. Completely side thing. A little tangent. But yeah, we've listened to some tremolo picking stuff in the past. It never really dawned on me how fun it would look on paper, though. uh, But yeah, so it breaks up a lot of the rhythmic and textural monotony of the song to introduce a little bit of melody. It is a longer section. I think it was at least 24, 36 bars long. It was a pretty fast tempo, so I'm pretty sure it was a little bit higher in the bar length. But it focused on obviously the speed and the texture of those constant attacks that you're going to get from that style of playing, but it also had a lot more melodic focus than any of the other sections in the song, and that's primarily because there's a lack of repetition. They actually wrote these longer melody lines for the solo section, and I love it. I've mentioned in the past that contrast is important for music, and I think this was a fantastic little point for the song to open up a little bit and explore something outside of texture and environment. All right, those are my thoughts on Mayhem's Freezing Moon. I don't think I have anything else to talk about. Definitely a ride. And definitely way outside of my safe zone. Oh man, what would you call that? My typical listening. It's the stuff that I usually enjoy. I can't say I'll be returning to it, but I appreciate that it was brought to my attention, and I'm glad I did check it out. And as usual, I don't stop at one song. Bands have multiple facets across their entire discography. A single song can be different from another song in an album, and it can be very different from another song 10 albums later or 10 albums previous. So I don't want people to think that, I've listened to Mayhem and I'm done. I'm always ready to give bands second, third, fourth, fifth chances to show me new things that they're doing or let me explore different sides of the music, even if I still don't enjoy it. On a casual listen, there's always something interesting to look at from a critical perspective. This is where you guys come in, though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not. Anything that might have stuck out to you that I missed in my analysis that you think I should know about. Go ahead and post those comments down there. Above the comment section is a description box. I don't know why I did that. I got to get animations for this ending, right? Got to get like the subscribe button. Bing! And then the like is like flipping, and then there's a thing, and then the mouse cursor on it. I don't know. There's a description box with a link for Linktree in there. It's a fantastic little resource. It's a menu with all the links related to critical reactions. Whether you want to check out the Discord, support me through Patreon, follow me on Twitter, submit some special selections, whatever. There's like 11 links in there. Go check it out. Above the description box, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all of those. I'll be back later, right now, probably. Yes, in 30 seconds, another video will be releasing. It'll be today's special selection. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow as usual, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We'll be checking out the penultimate video for this week's theme of Norwegian rock and metal. Till next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.